He just went and said the quiet part out loud. This is absolutely astonishing from the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. He just declared that the US attacked Iran because Israel bounced the US into it. Just listen to what he says here, and let's discuss the implications, as well as the signs that the illegal war on Iran is proving to be a disaster for the belligerents.
Did you tell lawmakers that there was an imminent
There absolutely was an imminent threat, and the imminent threat was that we knew that if Iran was attacked, and we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us. And we were not going to sit there and absorb a blow before we responded, because the Department of War assessed that if we did that, if we waited for them to hit us first after they were attacked, and by someone else, Israel attacked them, they hit us first, and we waited for them to hit us, we would suffer more casualties and more deaths. We went proactively in a defensive way to prevent them from inflicting higher damage. Had we not done so, there would have been hearings on Capitol Hill about how we knew that this was going to happen, and we didn't act preemptively to prevent more casualties and more loss of life.
I beg your pardon? The claim here is that the US knew Israel was going to attack Iran, that this would mean Iran would strike back at the US, and so the US struck preemptively. A few basic points here. Israel is in no position to attack Iran without US support. It is entirely dependent on the US militarily, in terms of aid more broadly as well as for diplomatic and political support. If the US told Israel it would not take part in such a war, then the war would not happen. How do we know this? Not just because of the basic facts that Israel is militarily dependent on the US, but because Israel has been agitating for this war for decades. And despite previous presidents presiding over such criminal disasters as Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya, even they were not stupid enough to get dragged into a war with Iran. They had no ideological opposition to such a war, no moral opposition. They just believed quite rationally it would prove a strategic disaster for the US. And in any case, Donald Trump and his administration decided to commit to the biggest build-up in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. They repeatedly made clear that the US intended to attack Iran for its own reasons. That's what they said. During the protests in January, Trump declared help is on its way. And on the 23rd of January, Trump posted that a massive armada is heading to Iran, declaring that time is running out, it is truly of the essence, demanding Iran make a deal, and warning that the next attack will be far worse than last year. So we're stuck with a couple of possibilities. One is that Marco Rubio has admitted that Israel has bounced the US into a war with Iran against his will. So much for America first. So much for Trump renewing US strength, making America great again. What Rubio is admitting there is Israel first. What else is there to say? Or Marco Rubio thinks this whole illegal war is clearly a disaster and he's making excuses. They made us do it. Or maybe it's a combination of the two. Now listen to this as well, because it is also very instructive.
They are producing, by some estimates, over 100 of these missiles a month. Compare that to the 6 or 7 interceptors that can be built a month. They can build 100 of these a month, not to mention the thousands of one-way attack drones that they also have. They've been doing this for a very long time, and by the way, they've been doing it under sanction.
This is really, really revealing. The point he's trying to make here is that this shows what a threat Iran posed, and that's why it had to be attacked now before it got stronger. That's why he said it. But firstly, before we discuss what this really means, there is no indication that Iran was threatening any attack, but endless evidence for a long time that both Israel and the US were threatening attacks, and indeed executing attacks, like last year. As Reuters reported yesterday, Trump administration officials acknowledged in closed-door briefings with congressional staff on Sunday that there was no intelligence suggesting Iran planned to attack US forces first, two people familiar with the matter said. But what Marco Rubio is admitting to is that Iran has considerable defensive capabilities, which explains why Iran has not been the walkover that the administration clearly predicted. This brings us back to leaks from the Pentagon last week, which suggested that a prolonged attack on Iran could lead to the US running out of munitions. That's why General Dan Kane, in charge of the US military, had grave doubts about a war with Iran despite being a hawk. Some of you may recall that I reported on that last week. As the Washington Post reported last week, as the Trump administration weighs an attack on Iran, the Pentagon's top general has cautioned President Donald Trump and other officials that shortfalls in critical munitions and a lack of support from allies will add significant risk to the operation and to US personnel, according to people familiar with internal discussions. He'd warned that major operation against Iran faced challenges because the stockpile of US munitions had been depleted by what is described as Washington's ongoing defense of Israel and support for Ukraine. In other words, support for Israel's genocide has depleted US military strength. I'd also note that some hawks argue that the war in Ukraine was a big opportunity to deplete Russian military strength. Talk about hubris. Now, the Wall Street Journal also reported options being studied for strikes on Iran range from initial limited strikes to a days-long aerial campaign aimed at toppling the regime. All options carry risks, but a prolonged campaign in particular could incur significant costs to US forces and munitions stockpiles, officials said, complicating the protection of regional partners if Iran is able to retaliate. If the US uses up large amounts of air defense munitions and other items that are in limited supply, it could also impact preparations for a future possible conflict with China. The US did not go for limited strikes. It's gone for the days-long aerial campaign aimed at toppling the regime. Donald Trump clearly believed that by killing the supreme leader, the whole regime would come crashing down like a pack of cards. But he was wrong. This is why this attack should not be seen as a symptom of US strength, but the lashing out of a declining power, which is accelerating its own decline. It's China, as noted there, supposedly the main strategic rival of the US, as identified by Donald Trump and co., which is benefiting, not least because they know the US is militarily bogged down elsewhere and being militarily weakened. That's when you leave aside what's causing a headache or sleepless nights by the sounds of things for William Hague, no lefty. He's the former Conservative leader and Foreign Secretary, who warns in the Times newspaper, that esteemed establishment organ, of looming chaos which will damage US and Western strategic interests. Hague says of Trump, he could emerge as the great hero who freed Iran, but he is more likely to have triggered a chain of events that he will struggle to control. He notes there is no imminent threat from Iran and the war is not consistent with international law or based on any interpretation of a US mandate, which is a verbose way of saying it's illegal. He goes on to say such considerations will now be dismissed by many as merely outdated aspects of a declining liberal order. But international law, along with consistency and predictability in the conduct of major powers, matters because it underpins some level of trust and cooperation between nations that otherwise will be at each other's throats. Taken away, and the results are both very expensive and increasingly dangerous. And here's the thing. This so-called liberal order he refers to was always full of hypocrisies and deceits rigged in favour of the West, and in particular, the failing hegemon, the falling hegemon, whatever you want to call it, the US, as it was, but formally getting rid of any form of international order in favour of an open embrace of the law of the jungle, that will prove disastrous for this collapsing US hegemony, as less unhinged Western establishment types understand. Now let's take in the chaos that's been unleashed by this illegal war, as well as the crimes. Iranian missiles and drones are targeting US bases and other targets in neighbouring Western states, which is exactly what was predicted would happen. That includes missiles which have rained down on US military bases in Bahrain. In these videos, you can hear Bahrainis cheering on the attacks. This is a country with a majority Shia population repressed by dictatorship. They rose up in 2011 and their protests were suppressed, their uprising was suppressed by the Saudi dictatorship, which sent in their troops. Now, footage shows violent protests breaking out.
والرد محضر وتقرر يا جند الإسلام فهبوا بالموت الأحمر القائد كبر زمجر اقترب الوعد بسقوط الشيطان الأكبر.
Hundreds of drones and 186 missiles have reportedly been fired by Iran at the UAE, which is the staunchest US ally other than Israel in the region. This appears to be footage of the ports of Fujairah, which I've almost certainly pronounced completely wrong. I'll explain why it's important, though.
مثقال ذرة شرا يره.
You see, Iran has declared the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil passes through, closed, and said they will set on fire any ships that go through. This port offers the only alternative route for UAE to get its oil through, and it's now been bombed. What about Dubai, which has also come, of course, under attack? Watch this video here from a Westerner in Dubai.
Scared. I'm actually so scared. I'm in JVC right now and I can see... Oh, no. Not meant to be happening here. Can't everyone just chill out? Biggest concern is that people, like... I don't want anyone getting hurt, you know what I mean? Like, I've been hearing loud explosions sort of like in the background all day. And it's like... the sound, it shakes the windows. I don't know how to explain it. It's like the weirdest sound ever. And now I'm seeing them. This is not fun, guys. We're supposed to be in the safest place. Like, I love the UAE. I love being here. I feel so safe all the time. And now I can see it. Like, please just stop.
Now, she says this is not meant to be happening here. On one level, extremely distasteful. Clearly, she imagined violence would only be unleashed against places where there are white people, where victims would be confined to the likes of the Palestinians. But it's deeply revealing because places like Dubai have marketed themselves as oases of calm and stability for rich Westerners to come and spend their dosh. What happens to their economic model now? Note that Cristiano Ronaldo has reportedly fled Saudi Arabia to go to Madrid because of the escalating war. I would say a sign it isn't going well. US embassies are being closed in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia because of reported attacks, and there are mass protests in Baghdad near the embassy. In Pakistan, at least 22 have been killed as thousands took to the streets to oppose the war, including 10 killed when crowds tried to storm the US consulate in Karachi. But what about the global economic cost? In Britain, for example, there's now been the biggest two-day rise in gas prices ever recorded. That's just Britain. That will mean soaring energy bills, and we've already seen the political consequences of surging energy prices across the West. Israel has invaded Lebanon again, is bombing the capital Beirut, again, just wantonly committing war crimes. It has renewed its siege on the people of Gaza, using its war with Iran as cover to intensify its genocide. And meanwhile, of course, Tehran is being carpet bombed.
موشک از اینجا میاد، از سمت چپ بیاد. اومد. از اینجا میاد، از اینجا.
That is the Gaza playbook rolled out in Iran. The West legitimized the war crimes of the Gaza genocide. That means unleashing the same crimes elsewhere. The one certainty here is that so many more are going to be killed. But this war is a catastrophe in so many ways. It is a strategic catastrophe for the US and for the West. This is not going how they planned, to say the least. We'll have so much more coverage, including brilliant experts, including Iranian voices. Yeah, this coverage is what we're focusing on in the coming days and the coming weeks. We're going to try and offer a counterweight to the Western media. You may call that possible at patreon.com/OJ34, offering as we try and ramp up our coverage. There's something I want to end on. The Green Party are being smeared over their principled opposition to Israel's genocide and their opposition to war with Iran. Those smears are only going to escalate, not least with a new poll showing the Greens are now in second place, just 2 points behind Reform and 5 points ahead of Labour. They've hired the brilliant writer, Abby Wilkinson, as a press officer, and the Daily Mail have launched a vicious smear campaign against her personally. In their piece, they write, Green Party leader Zach Polanski has hired a spin doctor who denies women were raped in the October 7th Hamas attacks in Israel. Abby Wilkinson, appointed just days before the party's victory in the Gorton and Denton by-election, posted on social media there was no Israeli woman who says she was raped by militants. What they did is crop out what she was responding to and the full tweet that she actually wrote. In the tweet, she responded to someone doing an impression of her. They wrote, "I hate Israel so much. I'm prepared to publicly state that Jewish women raped and tortured by Hamas are deliberately telling lies to make people feel sorry for them." She then replied, "There is no Israeli woman who said she was raped by militants on 7/10. There are no such testimonies." And the key point there, leaving aside the discussion about sexual violence, claims of sexual violence on 7th of October, that the claims were not based on the testimonies of surviving Israeli women. So that's the point she was there responding to. She wrote, "There is one woman who was taken hostage and says she was sexually assaulted by a Hamas guard, and I believe her." The Daily Mail erased those comments and thus distorted what she said. Gutter journalism and an example of a smear which must be confronted. Please like and subscribe. Again, you help us always keep the show on the road. We're funded by you in terms of all the content we put out at patreon.com/ownjazz84. Leave your thoughts and your comments. By the way, sorry, you've got a new feature at Patreon now, so you can watch all these videos without ads. So if you want to get rid of the ads and not have to watch those ads, you can, sign up there and you won't have to watch them. Press like and subscribe. Leave your thoughts and your comments. Share the video. I'll see you in a bit.